Just talk to me about that. Talk to me about the dynamic of,
right.
You got to get your stuff done, Kurt.
Yeah. So a couple of things that sort of come to my mind as you point towards that. A phrase I've used before is boundaries build trust. When we honor boundaries, there's a rhythm of like, oh, that builds trust. Emotional health does have boundaries around it. It's not a free-for-all. It's not anything goes. Because again, I think if we put ourselves in the story of what God's doing, I do believe that God has said there are boundary lines for what is good and true. And so part of what happens in this tension that I feel is just making sure we are prioritizing the right things in the order. So something our team is really trying to consider more is, if our goal of being together in the local church is to experience God's presence in community, let's make sure we're keeping a sense of presence while we then give our best for whatever the task is. Is it worship leading? Is it coming prepared? Is it thinking about, a set list? Is it even as I'm worshiping in the room, if I'm learning how to be emotionally healthy in my day-to-day life, I'm growing in awareness. Maybe it helps me be free to be aware of God's presence meeting me as I'm worshiping from lead guitar, or maybe I'm growing as a person of integrity, meaning I say what is real and I follow through with what I say I will do. Then I come in prepared. Like I took time to worship during the week because I'm going to lead people in worship. And so there may be some maturing realities that are really neat that God does as we use our gifts, because we don't just rely fully on our strength and power, but we let that be a gift back to the Lord.
And it makes space for that other thing to happen, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little more freed up if I love worship. I absolutely love worshiping with my community. When I was in college, I was challenged, just pay attention to what happens if you only listen to worship music for a week or two. And I was a different person. My mood was different, my countenance was different, and I just didn't really ever go back. I like all kinds of music for the most part, but it's I just listen to worship music. And so I think uniquely for our worship leaders and our worship teams, there's a grace for the community when we come in and we have been worshiping ahead of the church as we've practiced. When we come in and we're bringing our real lives into God's presence, and that's the kind of culture we're building, it gives permission for a church who's coming in to bring their real life into God's presence.
Yes.
And so worship becomes my life back to the God who's given me his very life.
It's fun. I love what you're saying, because you're not saying new things right now, but you're giving us a very helpful frame for reality. Because you were talking early in our conversation about, there's something about emotional health that is what is real and what is true.
Yeah.
And if we want to have a worshiping community, it's interesting. And if we want to have an emotionally healthy